Hey, friends, welcome back to another episode of the Girlfriends Without Benefits podcast. Today, I'm going to let Kaylin do the intro.
Today is
Today,
going to be a fun day where I get to interview these two on a cool thing that they recently did. And so, without further ado, I will we'll get right into it. But to save the identity of the individual that they were working with, we are going to call him John Doe. So John is who I'll be asking questions about. But before we kind of get into it, if you, Cass or Jade, want to give us a brief kind of overview of the purpose of what you guys were doing.
yeah,
Go
so
for it, Cass. Yeah.
I'll start and then I'll let Jade tap in. But we have a program called Spiritually Whole. And what it is is essentially a 3-day, 4-day intensive with at least 2, if not 4 or 5 healers. And we kind of approach things from multiple different angles to kind of get a full healing, if you will, kind of from a shamanic perspective. So that's what Jade and I did with one other partner of ours in the woods with our client, John.
Awesome. So Jade, can you talk a little bit about that preparation before the experience in person?
Yeah. So I got to spend several sessions via Zoom with John and really getting to know him and making him feel seen and safe. And then Cass was able to listen to a lot of those sessions and recordings, as was the other healer that was involved, and really get an idea of, where he was at. And Cass was able to start tapping in, like literally just getting information about him, past lives, etc., and information about where he was going to need to go. So I would laughingly say sometimes that we were going to play good cop, bad cop. I don't know if that.
It pretty much worked. It's pretty much what we did.
Which role were you, Jade? Which role were you, Cass?
I'm sure that's pretty easy to guess, right?
I was not.
I don't know because people know Cass is Shamama. So
yeah. Well, this was
there
not
might be another side.
I was going to say this was not a Shamama moment. This was, we'll get into that, I'm sure. But
yeah,
there are some clients who go willingly into the darkness, and there are other clients who want to go willingly, but they will not let themselves go willingly. So we need to bring another side of the shaman out.
Yeah. So yeah, I got to spend a lot of time with him, and that was good. There were some traits in this human that made it kind of tricky sometimes to feel, well, he was there for healing and he was open for that. And so, he was being real and human, and it's not always pretty or pleasant. So I did have some trepidation going into it to spend that kind of time with him. I was like, oh, this is going to be a lot of energy. And it was, but it was magical at the end.
See, I never had that trepidation though.
I know you didn't.
Because you didn't spend the time.
That's true.
And I almost feel like, Jade, would you say it was good that you had those kind of hard moments or trepidations before you got into it? Did it prepare you at all, or do you wish that you wouldn't have had those feelings?
No, for sure. And let's be honest, anytime you are working with someone like this, or you're in a space where you're promoting healing, the healing is actually happening inside of you, right? So a lot of my trepidation was about like just a lot of different things that were going on with me personally, and then just being away from my home. There were a lot of things going on with my family, with my son, where I was feeling that I shouldn't leave, but I knew that it was the right thing to do. So it was multifaceted and multi-layered.
Awesome.
As it always is.
Yeah, exactly. So if you could give me a little bit of information around the days, weeks leading up to what that preparation was like for you guys.
Yeah, so my preparation is
During
I
the
show
days.
up.
It's
Yes
true.
and no, because I hear there's
No.
something about a shaman's closet,
Yes, there is a
and there
shaman's
needs to be a
closet.
toolkit that has to travel with you guys.
No, so Jade does a lot of the actual preparation in the real world and in the physical. And then for me, while I'm tapping in and getting all this information, I was getting kind of a download of like which crystals we need, which oils we need. Do we need Palo Santo? Do we need sage? What offerings are going to the fire? So like my prep works looks very different. I basically sit there and wait. And I'm like, okay, like guide me, lead me, tell me what you want me to do and tell me what you want me to bring. So that was Jay did all of the physical preparation. I kind of listened to, I don't know, probably 60 to 70% of your conversations with John. And then I kind of go into my little cave, if you will, my little shaman closet apothecary, and basically just go shopping. And Jade and I sat there on that day that we were kind of prepping and grabbing all the physical stuff that I knew we needed for ceremony and for working with him. And she was like, "You have everything in this closet."
He has everything in that closet. And she was getting so excited. Kaylin, you've seen her.
I
You've
love
seen
it
her
when
like,
she gets there.
yeah, when she's like tapped into shaman work. I've never seen anyone so giddy to heal. Like she's so giddy about it.
Because we knew
And
we needed heart chakra stuff. So we knew we needed green aventurine. We knew we needed rose quartz. We knew we needed tourmaline. We knew like so we knew we needed selenite, like all of the selenite. So I was just kind of shopping. And I mean, we did what lemon bob, juniper, and jasmine for diffuser blend, which was like really kind of feminine, heart opening. I knew which sprays we needed because I was like, we need things that are going to cleanse the space for us as the healers, not necessarily even for the client, but we knew we're going to need things to keep him to make sure that he feels safe. And so we're just kind of gathering all these things, and my bed was literally covered.
yeah, feathers, rattles, drums, all the things. So I kind of sat back and watched her and started taking notes, like literal notes, because she was hilarious. So should I share some of said quotes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the first one that really just cracked me up is she's like messing around and all of a sudden she goes, "Fucking mugwort." Is not something that you hear on a regular daily basis.
Well, to be fair, I was clearly practicing my own blood rituals in the closet because I pulled out the smudge stick and it pricked me and my finger started to like actually bleed. So, and why
But
would
all
I
I
not
heard was
address it by
fucking
its
mugwort.
like, I'm not gonna be like, I'm not gonna address it by a name that it's not called. So it's not how I work. I'm gonna damn it to hell with its proper name.
Mugwort. I'm like, yeah. Are you like practicing lines for your Harry Potter,
Never seen Harry Potter. Can't attest to that.
literally sounded like a Harry Potter
Oh.
movie or something you'd read from a book.
I think what I love is that just goes to show you Cass's personality too. Like she's like in her woo space, but like she's still gonna be dropping some F-bombs. So like
Oh,
don't
100%. Mid-ceremony too, there was F-bombs going.
Oh, for sure. The next one that she said in the closet was, "Where's my torch?"
So this is really important. And if you're on the YouTube channel, luckily I have a torch right next to me and it's a butane lighter. This lights some shit. Do you see that?
Yes. And actually, I wrote that down and I'm getting myself one because a regular lighter does not do the trick on a lot of smudge sticks.
No.
So the torch is, yes, I'm sold on the torch, not the mugwort so much, but the torch for sure.
So I had a fire starter because we knew we were going to use a fire and use kind of the energy of grandfather fire to burn some things off of John. But just when you're mid-ceremony, the last thing you want to be doing is fucking playing with matches. Like, I'm sorry, like my match won't light my sage. Like, no, I need power.
So
she needs where's her torch? Yeah.
Exactly.
Next one. Where's the phosphorus?
Oh, yeah, that was after. So I should like, let me clarify why I'm asking for phosphorus. You might as well bring in, where's the Jade, do you own any chlorophyll?
Yes, you said that one
That
too.
was from a previous
Do you have any
ceremony.
chlorophyll?
That was a previous clearing. Yeah. Hey, do you have chlorophyll?
Yes, let me go gnaw on a plant. So I will say, like, I think this is good to know that, like, one of the shaman's roles is not necessarily to just take care of the client, but it is to take care of kind of the healers that are in the space that are working too. So like chlorophyll, not necessarily for client. Phosphorus, not necessarily for client, but I need even like the Tulsi rose tea, like copper water bottles, like there's things that I need to like help internally with us in order to like clear and disconnect us so we can keep going, because, which we'll get to in a second, I'm sure, these ceremonies happen in waves, and like it's like a marathon. Like it's not like, okay, one wave, like, okay, now we have 16 more coming, like, okay, we're 8 down, 8 more to go. So like I need to make sure that, you know, your energy and the other healer's energy and whoever else we're working with energy can stay up in order to sustain. So phosphorus is a mineral we use to help that. Chlorophyll is a mineral, or is a compound that we use to reground and recenter. Yeah.
Not things that you hear every day.
No. And the last one that I wrote down is, this was after too. She said, I was trying to talk to her and she's like, oh, excuse me, I'm still smoking. Which she was literally like, there was smoke like rising from her from everywhere. That was after you'd lit, I think you had lit sage or something. You were smudging something and it was still smoking. So you were like, excuse me, I'm still smoking.
I don't even remember that one.
So those are the memorable quotes that I took notes on.
That's beautiful. I love it. I'd love to know a little bit about the space that you guys held the ceremony at, and what work went into preparing that space, and how you decided on it.
Yeah. So the space that we normally use kind of up here in Maine had some water damage. So we had to kind of find a new space. So there's a couple of things that go into space, because like the two big things with ceremony are set and setting. So it's mindset going in. Are you comfortable with the healer team around you? Do you feel safe? Do you feel contained? And then the actual physical setting. So we looked at a number of different rentals and places, and I wanted something ideally kind of set back, woodsy, nature-based, quiet, like not in some place downtown, not with a ton of people. And we found this great space that was in the woods right next to a river. So you had the sounds of beautiful, I mean, just magical rushing water. And then with a fire pit to kind of, the waters, yeah, it was water. The water was like literally after we were done, Jade and I sat there and kind of like just listened to the water, and like we're like, we want to just be here. Like,
Yeah.
but kind of finding a space that I also, and when you're working kind of one-on-one, I don't want a 3,800 square foot place. Because when we're going into the space, not only are we setting up kind of our altar, our ceremony items, crystal gridding it, cleansing the space, you know, making sure it's set, and also cleansing on the way out. But like, you don't want to have to contain a massive physical space to work with one person.
That makes sense.
Jade, any additions to that?
No, I think you said it perfectly. Yeah, I think that I think you did a good job. I mean, we have talked a lot about how it has to change when we have a traveling kit, because we're thinking about, you know, possibly needing to travel. But since you could pack from your house, you were really able to think of every single thing you wanted to bring, from the right speaker to the salt lamp that you brought just for John's bedroom space, so that it would be, you know, always being cleared, and the diffuser that was always going, and the tea that he could drink. So every detail, there was a lot of details that we, especially Cass, thought of, that he wouldn't have even noticed, but all of them kind of fed into him feeling safe so that she could make him feel unsafe.
Unsafe.
No, so it's funny. I think it was the second day, maybe, or the third day. He goes, which was a great comment. He goes, you guys really did go almost over the top of thinking about everything. Which is like a really nice comment and compliment from, someone who is a little bit hard at giving compliments and comments like that. So to kind of take that and then to have watched him and nitpick other kind of events and ceremonies and things that he's done in the past, and for him to kind of make that, I was like, oh, that's probably about as nice as you could ever physically get.
And it was
that
almost
after you guys had done plant medicine with him and done some work on him, or before?
That
After.
was after. Yeah, that was when he was.
It was almost
I
like
wonder.
he was crying uncle. Like he tried a couple of times. He's like, okay, that's enough. Oh, that's good. Let's just stop here.
I'm gonna make sure you get what you paid for.
Exactly.
So I am curious about the actual ceremony. What was that like? Give us some anecdotes. Like, I think we deserve to know as listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Jade can start.
Well, I was going to say, if you haven't picked up, Kaylin said plant medicine. So plant medicine was involved, which is a different journey. And we all wanted to be in that space together. So it was you can't always control the environment or control what happens. And that is where the trust and the faith measure comes in, especially for me. That's what I was feeling like. I needed to trust and I needed to just kind of let go. And it was powerful. So that's what I wanted to say first about it.
Jade said it was the most ayahuasca mushroom ceremony that she has ever done in her life.
I literally felt like I was back on in Costa Rica doing an ayahuasca ceremony. And I'm like, well, duh, a shaman is here leading the ceremony. So why wouldn't it feel like that? And because I was sitting with the medicine too, although much less than John, it still helped me feel connected. And I feel like that was a really important part of the journey, is that we went with him, we took the journey with him.
Yeah. I am still jealous about what happens when you take plant medicine versus what happens when I take plant medicine. It's just really unfair.
If you could illustrate that for us, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so I think the best example in my mind is, we're walking outside and we're standing looking at the little river behind, and Jade's like, wow, it's magical, and just looking at nature, and Melanie's like, yeah, isn't it beautiful? And John is like, yeah, what happens if people are looking at us? And then I'm like, okay, can we get to work?
We were all on this journey together. I was closing my eyes. I was seeing mandala shapes in the colors of the chakras. Like it was like literally running through my chakras and like clearing, and the sun was shining. And it felt, I was saying thank you to Mama Aya because I could feel her there. And I was just like blissing out, right?
Yeah, she has like a tear in her eye, and I'm like, okay, can we get this show on the road? There's a lot of shit to clear.
And I'm like looking at her like, this is the show. It's already on the road. Let's go together gently. And you're like, no.
Cass, what were you seeing in that moment?
Absolutely fucking nothing. No,
besides
I don't.
All the shit that you had to do.
Correct. Yeah. I kept getting like so when I'm in a ceremony space, and Jade will probably tell a funny story about this, I can only do what I'm told to do and nothing else. Like there's nowhere, like I can't sit and enjoy, and like I have to like, okay, it's like, go fire now, go grab this, do this, clear this, sound bowl here, crown chakra here, root chakra here, go crystal grid. Like it's very like pointed and direct. And part of me, when she's like, oh, look at the pretty mandala, I'm like, I'm jealous, because I'm like, I want to see the pretty mandala. And even halfway during ceremony, I redosed as well, just to like see if I could get a pretty mandala.
But no, instead
mandala.
Instead you saw, I was witness to this, like the other healer that was there, was just a magical human being, was on her own journey. In her mind, she was traveling with the medicine, and Cass was able to see where she was. She's literally like, "Are you back from Egypt yet?" And the other healer was like woke up, and she's like, "Oh, wow, how did you know that's where I was?" And then Cass is just telling her everything that she saw, like hieroglyphs and all these other things. And the healer was like, "How can you see that?" And Cass is almost like, matter of fact, "Okay, well, this is why you saw it, because it applies to your music." And then says all these other things. And she's like, "Okay, can you start drumming now? We got to work."
So
We're like, "We just want to float and go."
What's funny is that is how Cass leads in her CEO role as well.
Yes,
Like when we're like in a work meeting, and if there's like a tangent, you know, as Tom likes to take us off on sometimes, Cass will be like, "All right, Tom, next."
it's true. So it's funny that you mentioned that, because like one of the questions that John had for me was like, when do you shaman and when do you tech? And like, what is like your percentage breakdown between either?
He
And
did
I
ask that.
Always.
Yeah.
I literally couldn't answer the question. I'm like, 24.
There is no separation. That's just it. There is no separation. It's like the stories that I've heard you guys tell from this experience, because obviously I couldn't be there. And from experiences in the past and from just working, like she is exactly who she is. That no matter what role it is that she's in, like she is herself.
Jade,
Agreed.
can you tell her? I thought you were going to go down the 4 directions path.
I know. I'm waiting for it, Jade. Give us
So right before the ceremony, well, as it was just getting going, the other healer really wanted to call in the 4 directions, which is what you do in a shaman ceremony. I mean, that's, you invite them in, right? And Cass has done this hundreds of times, right? And it was really funny to watch Cass, because I could tell when Melanie asked her, she had this kind of look on her face, like, okay. And I saw her, what did you grab? Your feather?
I think I grabbed
right?
a feather.
Yeah, you grabbed a feather, and you went
and rattle too.
And a rattle, right, to call in the 4 directions. And we for a minute you were like, which is where am I? Where's north? And then you were finally standing what we decided was north, right? And you stand there and you're staring out the window, and I'm already journeying, right? So I'm already being affected by the medicine. I'm just staring at her, and she's staring out the window. And I saw her kept opening her mouth, and then she'd close her mouth, and then she'd open it, unclose it. And then after like 1 minute, she just turned around and walked out of the house. I just left the house. I was like, bye, Cass. Like, I don't think we're calling in the 4 directions right now. But what she explained later, and I saw this really happening, is she's literally not able to do or say what Cass would necessarily do or say. She is literally being told what to do in every minute. And that's really obvious when you're in ceremony with her.
And at
Cass,
that
can
moment,
you call in the 4 directions for us right now?
100%.
Just confirm that you still know how to do it.
Well, it's funny because that night I was lying in bed, like once we got back to the house, and I was like, great serpent, then we welcome you. I was like running through them. I was like, okay, wrap your golden coils of light around us. Like, and I was like, wait, I know these. Like, what the fuck? It was but like at that time too, I was like being told, it was like, go outside, start the fire now. And I was like, okay. And before the ceremony, I had already set up the altar and called in directions, and like I didn't do it aloud because you guys were talking, and like I didn't want to be like cause more attention to, like, because he was starting like John was starting to get slightly nervous, and then like I still staged him. That's not like a non-negotiable. And I was like, oh, I can do my little altar setup and my internal ceremony beforehand. So yeah, it was go outside and start the fire now. And I was like,
before, and you were like in your head, okay, I will go start the fire. Before I do that, I'm going to call in the directions. And Spirit's like, no, go now.
But should we talk about why the fire was important at that point too?
Yes, please give us some background as to why.
So at that point, I I would say that kind of that initial 20 to 40-minute initial transition is probably one of the most challenging, because that's where you're tapping in like up against ego to true surrender. And our client was like, I'm having trouble breathing. I can't breathe. It's getting really shallow. It's getting like really like, chesty breath. And I didn't know this
He
at the
has a lot of breathing trauma from
Yeah.
childhood.
Yep.
You'd already talked about with him. So it makes sense that he's
It made
having
total
this
sense.
kind of panic, almost like a panic, like, I don't want to do this anymore, which is very, very normal and very typical.
Yeah. So I think it was at that point, he was really focusing on, the other healer drumming, and Jade was kind of, talking and kind of guiding him through. And I'm getting go outside, start the fire. So I start the fire and we bring him out there. And there's a plant called mullein, and it's a beautiful, like massive leaf. And it's symbolic of like the lungs and being able to breathe. And it's like a plant that does a lot of like bronchial support and breath. And we get him over to the fire, and Melanie spots the mullein from like 40 feet away. She's like, look, I see a mullein leaf.
You guys were both like, oh, mullein? And I'm like looking around, I'm like, who's mullein? Like, what are they talking about? They were like just geeking out about this plant. I'm like, okay, guys,
This plant
like,
should have been
no.
dead. Like, just clarifying, this plant should have
Yeah.
like definitely like kicked it a long time ago, because it was cold and
It has definitely frozen
yes.
several times. The plant should not be alive, and it was very healthy.
So she goes over there and like digs through the leaves to find like the perfect, most beautiful leaf, gives him the leaf. All of a sudden he's hugging on to the leaf, and she's like talking to him about like he's still very cognitive, like, so she's talking about like the leaf and the benefits of the leaf, and I'm standing behind him running the leaf from a DNA activation through his lungs, and he's like, what are you doing? What are you doing back there? And I'm like, nothing, don't worry about it. I'm like, I'm here to support. He's like, but what are you doing with it? He's like, and then Melanie's, I think it was you actually, you were like, can you breathe better? And he's like, yes.
Yeah, that was great, because that's very indicative of this client specifically. He didn't want to believe what he knew was happening.
Yes.
So he would say things like, why am I holding this stupid leaf?
Mind you, that leaf was his best friend for the following
and that
6
leaf
hours.
stayed with him for the whole journey. He never let go of it. It was by the end of the ceremony limp and bedraggled, and there was even a hole in it, but he had not let go of that leaf. And at this, so he knew why he had the leaf. He knew that it was helping him, but it was hard for him to let go and admit that. So that was really fascinating to me.
I feel like that client is the typical client who will probably then next year be like, message us and be like, what was that thing called? Mullein? And then probably go plant a patch of mullein in his backyard. Like, that's where we're at.
Yeah, that's amazing. So when you're by the fire and you're merging the DNA of the mullein leaf with his, what's this next direction like for you? Like, what are you seeing after he says he's starting to breathe better? Like, do you just let him sit by the fire? Do you let him lead? Like, what do you?
She never lets him just do anything.
That's why I asked the question.
I know, Caitlin, I know.
No, we gave him a couple minutes to bond with the fire. Who
was in charge?
Exactly. We'll get to that in a minute. I'm sure. So it's interesting because like I would normally utilize the fire, and like if he were starting to release, like have him release into the fire and utilize that element, and he kind of wasn't having it. So I think it was Melanie actually a couple minutes in, it was like, she was like, okay, we're not going anywhere. Let's go get you to lay down inside.
That was her. Yeah.
Once he could breathe better. Cause yeah, like I was like, okay, this fire thing's not really not what I thought it would be. It was beneficial, and I'm glad we did it because we got the leaf and that whole activation in play. But yeah, our next direction was to bring him back into the house. Plus it was cold as fuck. And like it was very chilly.
Yeah. So you said that Melanie said to bring him in and lay him down.
Yep.
And so what kind of came through? Is that like kind of the end of your first wave or second wave, or where in your wave process?
Kind of the end of the introduction, if you will. That was like the forward to a book. We're
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm ready to get to chapter 1 in my mind.
Yeah. I
I
would
think
agree.
once he started to lay down on the ground, that was like really chapter 1.
Mhm.
So,
And what
Yeah.
direction were you getting at that point? Or Jade, what were you seeing then?
Yeah, so that's when I really got to see her, move into this space where I don't think she stopped moving except for very brief moments for the next many hours, like hours. At one point, I was like watching her in this impossible squat stance over his prone body, moving all of these like different crystal bowls, like she was trying to help him open the chakras that needed to be open. And she was in this impossible, like, I'm like, literally, like, how is she standing like that for that long? Just like, I had no idea. And she was like leaping over him and running to open doors. She cried out for you at one point. She's like, I need Kaylin.
and poor Jade's like, what can I do? I'm like, nothing. You're already doing like so much. I'm like, I need one other like I need another person who I don't have to speak to using words.
Yes, exactly. And I think like at one point, as we've talked about, like, Cass, you don't have a lot of earth, right? And when you're up high and you're flying and you're so far gone, you need to be brought back down. And thanks to the medicine, this is in great part thanks to the medicine, like I could see her like spirit soul like way above her body, and I knew that she needed to come back down, and she was kind of flying. And so I literally like
She leaped.
crawled
No,
over
you didn't.
and
You
like,
actually leaped.
did I it felt like I was crawling. I probably stood up, but I just grabbed onto Cass's feet. It was like the only, like I had to bring her back down. Like I kind of like, you imagine like a bunch of balloons like headed up into the sky. Like I was pulling the string back down.
So I think the first thing, like, because again, comes in kind of waves. The first wave was like extraction. When I looked at it, and I think it was the first one, right? I don't know.
And I grabbed your feet, or
No. I'm just thinking through like kind of what
waves.
we did, and like I think it was extraction first.
oh yes, you were definitely, well, that was kind of the theme of the night.
Well, there was kind of the two biggest ones that come to mind were the extraction of like kind of some darker soul entities, past life piece that was like still being stuck in the body, and then the other one was actually kind of womb healing as to like coming into the world and like what that looked like, and being able to feel safe and feel contained kind of around the feminine. So those were kind of like the two big, there was other pieces, but those were the two kind of, when I look at it, kind of the most transformative micro ceremonies in a ceremony.
Yeah. So I obviously experienced ceremonies with you before, and I know kind of how you get things and then you start speaking. So was his team coming through for you, and what was that like speaking, if they did, with them?
Yes. So I was getting his team. I wasn't getting his guide, which is a story for probably a little bit later. But I was getting his team, and I was getting kind of the blueprint of what to do and which order to do it is what I get. So like where I thought we were going to go first was not necessarily where we went first. I think it was probably where I thought we were going to go. If I was in charge, it would have been first, and it was really technically third in kind of a sequence of events, because we needed to remove some stuff before we could kind of go into a different area.
And so his team told you that?
Yeah. So spirit, God, his team, my team, they all merged together into kind of one.
They, them, there.
They, them, exactly. Their pronouns are they, them, there. Slash, what is it? One spirit, God, combine all of it together. But I was kind of getting direction as to that certain things needed to be cleared first. So like, for instance, one of them was an extraction that we had to do. And I made the mistake of having listened to the client. Jade's really great at listening during prep. I'm not meant to listen, we've kind of talked about this with like gray area, like Jade has to play in the non-gray area. I have to play in the gray area. So like we kind of balance each other out really, really well with that. But during the first night when we all had went out to dinner, he was like, I definitely don't have sexual trauma. And I was like, okay, cool. And then during ceremony, I believed that. Why? I don't believe anyone ever. So like that was weird.
Seriously.
But during the extraction part, I was trying to get his heart open because it was kind of very shut down, very cloudy, kind of very blurred, like not very vibrant. And I was going from root to heart, root to heart, root to heart. And if you guys know anything about chakras, root's the safety piece. And the root system has to be opened and actually softened before you can open kind of the heart chakra. And I tried it for, I don't even know how long. Time does not exist in kind of that space. But I tried for what felt like a really fucking long time.
That's when you were squatting over him.
Yep, that was my squat
what
stance.
was happening.
And I had set up root, heart chakra, and then crown. And root,
the bowls,
the
bowls.
The sound. Because I was doing I was working with kind of the vibrational healing piece, because that's one of the things that John really responded well to, is the vibrational sound healing. When I tried to go super divine feminine, it was not working. So I had to like bust out like Palo Santo versus like, I was using rose water at first. He was like, absolutely not. That smells making me sick. I'm like, no, it's fucking not. Like, you're the divine feminine's making you sick. Like, calm down. But I was using root, heart, crown, thinking that combo would somehow like open his heart, and it wasn't happening. So I went into solar, and solar was like, no, not working. Like, he has plenty of power. That's not his issue. Like, I was getting just, when I hear this and when I'm in that space, if I'm using different sound bowls and I'm using them simultaneously, if they're the wrong ones, there sounds like there's incongruence. It sounds like the tones don't go together. And when I find the right one in that space for him, the tones merge together and sound actually harmonious. So I was like, maybe I'm hitting it wrong. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. He said he doesn't have sexual trauma. Like, this is all the things that are like going light speed in my head. And I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to try it. And like, we're just going to see. And I went to sacral. And the minute I went to sacral, everything was like, like done, unlocked. Like, I was like, oh, you asshole. I can't believe I listened to you. How dare I? So that was kind of the first phase before we could go into, actually, we should talk about moving the moon too.
Yeah, if you could give me more information on that, Jade.
Are we just going to keep going and going until we're done, or are we going to make a part 2? What should we do?
That's a great question.
I feel like we like to leave people hanging. I think we should just dive into another episode and keep going. We have more to say.
I think that's a great idea. So we're going to leave it at Jade moving the moon.
Come back.
We'll catch
our next episode to find out how Jade moves the moon.
Bye.